In August of 2001, a woman sat alone in her office at one of the most powerful companies in America and typed a memo that would change corporate history. She wasn't a regulator or a journalist. She was a vice president at Enron, a company both feared and admired across the globe. And in that memo, she wrote 7 words that no one in that building wanted to read. "I am incredibly nervous that we will implode." She didn't email it. She didn't leak it. She handed that memo directly to the CEO, Kenneth Lay. She sat across from him and explained, in the precise language of an accountant, exactly how his company was a house of cards. She gave him names. She gave him the numbers. She laid out a path to survival. He thanked her, told her he'd look into it, and sent her on her way. 2 days later, Enron's lawyers were quietly researching a single question. Could they legally fire her? This isn't the story of how Enron collapsed. That story has been told. This is the story of the one person inside that fortress who saw the catastrophe coming, tried to stop it, and was nearly destroyed for telling the truth. Her name was Sherron Watkins, and what happened to her reveals a far more troubling story than just a single corrupt company. To understand her courage, you have to understand what Enron was in 2001. It wasn't just a business, it was a religion. Born in Houston, Texas in 1985, it had morphed from a sleepy natural gas pipeline company into what Wall Street worshipped as the future of American capitalism. By the year 2000, its reported revenues topped $100 billion. Its stock was a rocket ship. Fortune magazine had named it America's most innovative company for 6 consecutive years. Its executives were treated not as businessmen, but as visionaries. But what almost no one knew was that the entire magnificent temple was built on a foundation of lies. The architect of this illusion was the company's chief financial officer, Andrew Fastow. He had engineered a labyrinth of what are called off-balance sheet partnerships. Think of them as shadow companies with exotic names like LJM, Cayman, and Raptor. Their entire purpose was to act as a corporate black hole. When Enron made a disastrous investment, the multi-billion-dollar loss didn't appear on their official books. It just disappeared into one of these partnerships. When they needed to invent profit out of thin air to hit their quarterly targets, these same structures made it happen. The whole scheme was audacious. Fastow himself was paid over $30 million in management fees from these partnerships, money he was taking from entities that were supposed to be serving Enron. He was on both sides of every deal. He was the buyer and the seller, the borrower and the lender. The conflicts of interest were so brazen they could only survive in a culture where nobody wanted to ask questions, and nobody did. Enron's prestigious accounting firm Arthur Andersen signed off on all of it. Its law firm, Vinson & Elkins, gave it their blessing. The board of directors even voted twice to waive Enron's own code of ethics so Fastow could keep his scheme running. All the while, the executives at the top grew fabulously, impossibly rich. Sherron Watkins had joined Enron in 1993. She wasn't a crusader looking for a cause. She was a sharp, highly competent finance executive who, crucially, had previously worked for Arthur Andersen. That meant she understood the mechanics of high-level accounting better than almost anyone. When she began reviewing Enron's books in the summer of 2001, she knew exactly what she was looking at. And what she found stopped her cold. She recognized the Raptor partnerships for what they were, accounting tricks so aggressive they were practically fraud. She saw the fatal flaw in their design. The very partnerships meant to protect Enron from bad investments were being propped up with Enron's own stock. It was a circular, self-referential fantasy. The moment Enron's high-flying stock began to fall, the entire structure would vaporize, and it would take the parent company down with it. She ran the numbers again and again. The conclusion was always the same. Enron was a fiction, and when the market discovered the truth, the implosion would be absolute. Watkins did something that required a level of courage that's hard to comprehend. She wrote her now famous memo. She addressed it directly to the man at the top, Kenneth Lay, the founder, the chairman, the patriarch whose portrait hung in the lobby. She first dropped it anonymously in a company suggestion box. Then she did something even braver. She went to Human Resources, identified herself as the author, and requested a face-to-face meeting with Lay. That meeting took place in August 2001. Watkins sat across from the table from one of the most powerful men in America and told her her empire was about to die. She laid it out plainly. The Raptor partnerships were fraudulent. Andrew Fastow had to be fired. The only way out, she explained, was to come clean, hire a truly independent set of lawyers and accountants, specifically not Vincent and Elkins or Arthur Andersen, who she knew were compromised, and unwind the fraud before the market did it for them. He listened, he nodded, he said he would investigate. But before she left, he asked her one question. After everything she had just described, the conflicts of interest, the billions in hidden debt, the imminent collapse, he looked at her and asked if she thought Andrew Fastow was doing a good job. Years later, Watkins would say that question left her speechless. It's the most bizarre question I've ever received, and it's still hard for me to wrap my head around why that question came out of his mouth. What happened next revealed everything about Enron's true culture. Instead of hiring the independent investigators Watkins demanded, Lay handed her memo and her concerns over to Vincent and Elkins, the very law firm she had warned him was conflicted. Unsurprisingly, the firm conducted a swift review and concluded that while her points had some merit, no further action was needed. They found nothing fundamentally wrong with the arrangements their own lawyers had helped create. At the same time, behind her back, Enron's legal team began researching Texas employment law. They wanted to know if they could legally fire an employee for raising internal whistleblower concerns. She found out about this just 2 days after her meeting with Lay from a sympathetic source inside the company. The corporation she had tried to save was now actively plotting her removal. They came for her career piece by piece. They moved her out of her vice president's office. They confiscated her computer. They reassigned her to a meaningless job in a corner of the building, a position designed to sideline her completely. She was still an employee, but the message was unmistakable. She was an enemy. But here is the crucial twist in Sherron Watkins' story. Enron collapsed before they could finish destroying her. In October 2001, the stock began its free fall as the market's faith finally cracked. The shadow partnerships were dragged into the light. The SEC launched a full-scale investigation. In January 2002, Enron filed for what was then the largest corporate bankruptcy in American history. 20,000 employees lost their jobs and their life savings overnight. Pension funds across the country were eviscerated. As congressional investigators sifted through the digital wreckage, they found it, Watkins' memo. In January 2002, it was leaked to the press. A month later, she was testifying before the United States Senate. The woman Enron had tried to silence was now reading her prophecy into the congressional record for the entire world to hear. The fallout was immense. CEO Jeffrey Skilling was convicted of fraud and sentenced to prison. Andrew Fastow pled guilty and served 6 years. Kenneth Lay was convicted but died of a heart attack before he could be sentenced. And Arthur Andersen, the 89-year-old accounting titan, was convicted of obstruction of justice. The firm ceased to exist within months. One of the largest accounting firms in the world, gone. Another 28,000 people lost their jobs. Sherron Watkins was named one of Time magazine's 3 Persons of the Year in 2002. Her story and her memo became a direct catalyst for the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, the most sweeping corporate reform in generations, which for the first time offered real legal protections to corporate whistleblowers. She wasn't perfect. Critics have pointed out that she never took her concerns outside the company. She herself has acknowledged this, expressing a deep disappointment that she simply wasn't believed. She became a modern-day Cassandra, the Greek figure cursed with the ability to see the future, but also cursed to have no one believe her. Today, she teaches business ethics, trying to build the kind of culture that Enron so violently rejected, one where telling the truth is rewarded, not punished. The deepest lesson of her story isn't just about financial fraud, it's about systemic failure. It's about a system that punished the one person who was right and protected the people who were lying. Enron's lawyers, its executives, its board, its auditors, its bankers, the financial press, every single institutional safeguard that we are told exists to prevent this kind of catastrophe failed. They were either complicit or asleep. That is the Enron story that truly matters, not the complex accounting or the bankruptcy filing. It is the simple, chilling fact that one accountant in Houston, Texas, saw the truth with perfect clarity, walked it into the CEO's office, and watched as the system buried it, right up until the moment the lie became so heavy it buried them all.